a zoo is basically a place that you go with your children, or if you're a child and you go to the zoo and you find it really fun. But actually, for the animals, it is not actually that fun. It's actually horrible for them. They actually experience a lot of depression, anxiety, other serious mental illness. And the question I'm trying to answer right now is the experience of watching hundreds of animals roam their fake habitats and live their empty lives within their small closures worth their entire life? So, through my search, I started to gain a higher interest in animal rights in around middle school, and I kind of just I tried to educate myself more, and so I tried contacting PETA. I became a member, and I contacted the Raven Corps as well, and they were really helpful. I was able to get a mentor, and there are these two great high schoolers who also helped me a lot. Basically, I think around 7th grade, I started to get more into zoos, and I've always had an interest in zoos, I think, and I started to kind of form an opinion on a lot of different places of animal rights. And so I wanted originally to do the entirety of animal rights, and I realized that was too broad, so I decided to just focus on zoos, which was a really good choice because I really am interested in them. They're a controversial subject, which I think is another reason I'm drawn to it. There are a lot of things that helped me a lot with this project, but these 2 books that I read were actually really amazing. The first one is Animal Equality by Joan Denier and Reading the Zoos by Rainey Mullabud. Both of these books are written by amazing authors, and they really broke the essence of zoos and helped me a lot understand the crippling industry, and that was really helpful. So what I learned, language is kind of the terms you use when referring to zoological references. So instead of saying enclosures, you say home, or you'd say habitat. Yet these things don't really. Habitat is a place in the wild where animals live without boundaries, and home is a place of belonging, which is not a zoo. Animals don't belong in a zoo; they belong in the wild in their own habitat. So zoo language is mostly used by zookeepers, zoo workers. So Gary Clark, he is the director of the Topeka Zoo, he emphasized the importance of using proper language when referring to animal enclosures, talking about how habitats is the proper way to say it, and so is home, instead of saying enclosure, instead of saying cage. As well as that, Michael Robinson, the director of the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., also said it is biologically ignorant to think of zoos as prisons. However, in the American Heritage Dictionary, a zoo is just that. It states clearly that a prison is a place of confinement, captivity, imprisonment, and restriction. All of these things apply to a zoo. So, Robinson also claims that animals in the wild are confined by territorial boundaries, as zoo animals are by enclosures. However, none of these things can even compare. A boundary, animal boundaries are much larger, and I think that even an animal would agree that a rectangular enclosure is much smaller. It's nothing compared to their natural habitat. So yeah, basically zoos have always had that way. They've done extremely well with convincing the public that they are freeing animals or protecting them. However, these statements aren't exactly true. They believe that they are protecting nature animals. However, most zoos can hold about 50 animals, and only a small percentage of those animals are endangered, making that argument extremely invalid. As well as that, freeing really doesn't make any sense when saying this, because they're not freeing them. I mean, they're freeing them from living a good life, I guess, but that's not really freeing. I would call that more captivating. As well, they always seem to be able to convince the public that they're saving them from predators or poachers. However, predators are actually the natural cycle of life, and we just kind of have to let that happen. Poachers are a huge issue, but I think they should be addressed differently than keeping animals in zoos. So a lot of zoos take in and injure animals. However, a zoo is definitely not the place to be taking care of an injured animal. These animals should not be kept in a public place where they can be watched every day of their lives. So, as well as this, zoos can also hold many risks. In 2000, at the National Zoo, 2 of Gabby zebras were killed due to cold, yet these animals are usually able to survive in the cold. Due to inadequate feeding, they're unable to gain fat to survive. As well as this, 2 fallow deer, as well as As well as this, at the Buttonwood Zoo, an intruder broke in, raped and beat a 2-year-old fallow deer, resulting in injuries in the rectum, vagina, head, and jaw. Proving that a zoo is not exactly a extremely safe place for animals to be living in. So, next something I'm going to talk about is habitats. So habitats is basically just like the place where we all have a habitat. It's kind of like where we live our daily lives. It holds all the things we need to live. So basically for an African elephant, their habitat spans around 2 million acres, and the human's habitat spans around 92,000 acres. So elephants habitats expand probably around 1,108,000 acres more than us. And in the zoo, African elephants are contained in around 6 acres or less, which is 1,999,994 acres less than they're used to. If humans were confined in a space proportionate to this, we would be captivated in the space like size of 2 city lots, which is basically just 2 houses, kind of. I mean, it's like 2 houses with like a yard, so it's like kind of like 2 house lots. Although zoos have expanded, they have tried to make their interior, like their habitats, their enclosures more habitat-like, more kind of like their natural habitats. However, like they will never compare to their natural habitats in the wild. And it also said that these habitats that they have only expanded and they have only kind of made these look more real just to like for it to add comfort to the visitors rather than to add comfort to the animals living inside these enclosures. So yeah, basically people who work at the zoo have kind of just made the public believe that zoos are good, which also makes it really controversial and makes it really hard to convince people that it's not, because everyone really believes that they are good. So yeah, along with this, many animals who are living in zoos experience a lot of depression, and a lot of this causes actually them to stop eating. And usually when this happens, zoos will usually just say, like, there's a lot of deaths that are actually caused by this because they will refuse to eat, and a lot of zookeepers will basically claim that there was no indications that they were kind of experiencing any illness, and that they kind of just died without any warning, kind of. So yeah. The black market is basically just like, there's a huge animal black market. So surplus animals are animals that are unwanted. So when so baby animals are so loved. Everyone wants to see baby animals. So zoos try to keep them in their zoos frequently. However, to make space for these animals, they have to get rid of other animals. So they have to get rid of animals which are now called surplus animals. And so usually zoos will try to sell to other zoos. However, when this doesn't work, they turn to selling to breeders and dealers. So a lot of zoos used to sell to a dealer named Edward Novak, who basically sold exotic animals to auctions, hunting operations, and other suppliers, and he ended up causing the death of many, many animals, so many zoos stopped selling to him. But the exotic animal trade has lasted for many decades and probably still will, and it doesn't matter if the zoos still continue to sell to dealers and other breeders, because everyone wants to see the baby animals and they need to do that to gain money, and so they do that despite the abuse that these animals go through. So anyways, yeah, zoo animal abuse. Animals in zoos have been abused since the beginning of zoo existence, and it's kind of just lasted throughout the entirety of zoos as a whole. And basically zoo abuse there's 2 kinds. There's physical abuse and mental, and there's less physical abuse now since it's really frowned upon now, but recently, like, they used to use behavioral tools which were actually really harmful, but they actually recently banned those, which is really good. But as well as this, animals still experience a lot of mental illness. They are mainly just being kept enclosed, as just being kept in a zoo is abuse as it is. And when these animals are kept in these, they actually experience a lot of mental illness, depression mainly. And So as I was researching this topic, I actually found out that the Oregon Zoo is actually one of the top 10 worst zoos in America, which I was actually really surprised by, but I realized that they actually have a huge breeding problem. So basically they have a couple elephants, and these elephants were they had a huge breeding problem. They used behavioral weapons that actually ended up hurting them. And so that was kind of their problem. And then there are a lot of other zoos on that list that had a lot of issues. Oklahoma Zoo were inadequately feeding their animals as well as neglecting them, which also led to a lot of deaths where they completely covered up and just claimed that there was no indications that there was anything happening with their animals. As well as this, outside of America, at the Copenhagen Zoo, many people were surprised when a healthy giraffe was shot and dissected and fed to a lion, and as well as at the Odense Zoo in Denmark. 2 biology students were ordered to dissect a healthy lion in front of an audience of ages 2 or lower as part of the Animal Inside Out event. So this is the kind of thing that happens to surplus animals. When they don't have enough space for them, then they'll do things like this, mainly. Okay. So my reflection. So my thesis statement was mental and physical effects that zoos have on animals and a serious fact of their existence. So looking back on my project, I feel like I really learned a lot, and I actually really enjoyed. This entire project caused me a lot of stress. I was always, I don't know. I stress a lot, and I feel like it was definitely causing me a lot of stress. But I feel really accomplished now, and I'm really happy I did it because I just feel like I learned so much from this project, and it was honestly learning, even though it was stressful. I feel like I really enjoyed it. Honestly, it was just really interesting, and I just love learning about this topic, and I really want to learn more. And so that is my report on zoos. Goodbye.